Okay, we're both recording then. Boom. Double whammy. Okay.
37 minutes. Engaged.
Okay, so we got this. All right. We're calling it pros versus. So, okay. You can notice in the background, Frank. I'm trying to focus. This is a great start. Frank has a mask on because this is different. This is
right.
So, I've got my good friend Bryan Close with me here, and
what's up, man?
Yeah. So you're enjoying a nice cigar out on the patio?
Nice cigar on the patio. It's 62 degrees outside at 8:30. I am not complaining right now.
What are you rolling with for cigars?
A little white label Monte Cristo.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. I got a Firestone.
What you got there?
Mind Hazy IPA.
Is it hoppy?
Yeah, it's pretty hoppy. It's smooth. You know, that bubbly. Okay, so what are you millennials watching? Do you millennials watch The Last Dance? Do you know who Michael Jordan is?
Oh, I know who Michael Jordan is, but I don't know if I.
Huh?
I am a millennial who likes Michael Jordan better than LeBron James. So.
Dang. Okay.
Hey, controversial, I guess, right?
Well, that's so that's one thing. Okay, so we were talking about this the other day. Something that separates millennials from like Gen X or whatnot, is telling of your age, because millennials is what, 80, 81, 82, sometimes 83. So I'm right on the
and the cut off of the millennial was, we thought, was like if you were born pre or post internet, right?
Yeah. And you, so you're old enough that you remember getting the disc, the AOL disc, right?
AOL, yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Dial up, yeah.
Yeah.
If you got home and everyone else was on, you couldn't get on because the bandwidth was taken up, right?
So a buddy of mine was talking today, and one of the things he thinks may be an age differentiator is, you remember playing the original NBA Jam, and then he also said,
"He's on fire."
Blitz. He's on fire. A couple years ago, we found at GameStop an NBA Jam, but it had Kevin Durant and Brian Westbrook on the Thunder. So Sonics were in
Russell Westbrook.
What did I say?
So you said Brian Westbrook, the safety from the Eagles.
Yep. There you go. Okay, so
it was weird. It was like basketball, and then it was football. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, that shows, how detailed I am with my sports knowledge. So
were you an NFL Blitz fan?
I played that on arcade a couple of times, but I've never played it on console. So that's one that would like supercharge and like tackle people and.
Yeah, and the Dallas Cowboys were the best team because they had Michael Irvin, Emmitt Smith, and Deion Sanders. And if you went and bought remember how you could go to like Fred Meyer or wherever and get like the video game books with the cheats in it? If you found the unlimited turbo, that was the number one cheat, because then if you had Deion, he was faster than everybody. So it was
get your interceptions. So my buddy was saying
he played offense too in NFL Blitz.
Oh,
so he was playing both ways on that. See, that was
my buddy said he played the Vikings because it was Randall Cunningham, Chris Carter, Randy
Moss.
So, but yeah. So what did you think about The Last Dance? Let's say the first two episodes. Was there any takeaways or things that stood out to you?
Well, one, I think I've watched the first two episodes twice, and then of course watched the 3 and 4 last night. But it's cool to see Michael Jordan like in his own element, like where he's actually like really like blunt and honest about all of that time. Yeah. Because you don't really get he was pre-social media and everything, so you didn't really ever get to see that. So for someone who, Michael Jordan is my favorite athlete of all time, so it's really cool to kind of see that behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Growing up, Jordan was my favorite. So.
Well, and I guess we should say, early on when we met, the first golf tournament we did, you and Brandon had the Air Jordan golf.
Golf shoes. That's right.
Yeah, that's those are pretty badass.
That's a cool story too, because those were
You got those up in Bend, right?
Yeah, down in Bend.
Yeah.
But yeah, they got released. It was a limited edition for the U.S. Open, I think. It was either the U.S. Open or the Masters. I couldn't remember. It was probably the Open because it was in the summer. But then they re-released them to like 7 or 8 golf courses across the country. And we were in Sun River, and I walked in the clubhouse, and they happened to be there.
Yeah.
So naturally, I had to call Brandon, my partner, and hey, do we need these? Yeah. Of course.
Yeah, it's branding. It definitely stands out at a golf tournament.
Yeah. So we show up and we look good when we're biz deving at our golf tournaments. So
Eugene, Oregon to me has, some of the best beer in the nation, and then Bend is up there.
Bend is good too.
Who was it? Andy McCabe, that's his stomping grounds. He was on the podcast, and it's beautiful out there. You can, golf and do all the water sports and hiking in the summer, and then skiing in the winter. So
yeah, it's great.
I would say from The Last Dance, the thing that stuck out from episode 1 and 2 was just how underpaid Scottie Pippen was. But it's kind of
right.
So the LeBron Jordan thing, just watching that and seeing how teams were allowed to play defense. So I think that's something that doesn't, even Kobe, like just Jordan got the piss beat out of him day in and day out, especially in the Eastern Conference. But then having Pippen and what did they say? The owner had said, don't even, it's not an option to come talk to me about, sign the deal. And he admits, he goes, it was like a year or two before things started getting stupid with salaries and started the event. And he goes, but he signed the deal, and Pippen signed like a 7-year deal or something because he
for like $18 million or something. Yeah. Something crazy.
But at the time, he was thinking he wanted, to secure things for his family. But at one point, he's like the number 2 player on the Bulls, top 10 in the league. He's the number 6 salary on the Bulls at like $2.7 million, and the 122nd salary in the league. So imagine all of the players ahead of him that are making,
Well, and what's crazy even on top of that is in 1998 was the 50th anniversary of the NBA. And he was voted as one of the top 50 all-time NBA players.
Yeah.
I mean, Scottie Pippen's amazing. I mean, but he had a bad agent. That's just
yeah. Well, and it's like he's all that more sympathetic in the show because he's like, he wasn't like, I want to get paid to get paid. He was like, I wanted a long-term deal. I wanted security for my family. It is full extended family. And
well, and I think you think about it, when he would have signed that contract, it probably was had it been the early 90s, if like 91, 92.
Yeah. That was
probably a lot of money then.
Yeah.
There was probably no one thinking that Michael Jordan would be making $36 million a year in 98.
Well, and then
that was when the NBA was crazy. There was no cap on what people could play players. You know what I mean? I mean, think about it now. What would LeBron be worth? I mean, he's $75 million. It'd be something crazy.
It'd be like soccer money, international soccer.
Yeah.
Soccer.
That Ronaldo money, right?
Yeah. So that's crazy. The other thing, obviously, as a Sonics fan, is what they got. So Pippen was 87, right? Jordan's 84, Pippen's 87. Sonics have Pippen. Apparently, they drafted him for the Bulls, and then they trade and they get Olden Polynice. Does anyone know who that is? No. And then Sonics get Sean Kemp in 89.
Yeah.
And then Gary Payton in 90, right? And so, but obviously, if you get Pippen, with the other pieces.
Well, what I thought was crazy was they showed Scotty's childhood friend that said that when Scotty went to college his first year, he was like 6'1".
Yeah.
And then he came back that first summer and he was like 6'4".
Yeah.
And then he went back to college and he came back and he was like 6'8". And the friend was like, what are they giving you?
Yeah. Well, and but spoiler alert, I guess Dennis Rodman had a similar growth spurt, right? So.
Right.
So that was a lot of fun. I really think for fans, obviously the buildup is the drama, right? And they're doing a good job of telling the backstory to lead up to, hey, this is Michael, this is Scotty. 3.
Yep.
I've watched most of 3, I've watched all of 3, which is about Rodman. So
honestly, the Phil Jackson one
is that
that's 4. That was probably my favorite one so far, because I knew most of the Jordan stuff, and same with Pippen. I mean, there was some stuff there.
Yeah.
And seeing the back and forth between Jerry Krause and all that. I mean, that was. Can you imagine that today? Like if who's the owner of the Patriots? Robert Kraft. If he would have come and said, you know what, Belichick, I don't care if you go 16-0 and win the Super Bowl, you're not coming back, and neither is Tom Brady and anybody else. Like, it's unthinkable.
Yeah. Well, and 2, to go from being the gutter to being the height, and then thinking, yeah, we could do it without the players or whatever, is basically how his statement comes off. Obviously, right. We're in Seahawk land where, changing the parts out, and whether they did it too soon or not, it's, who knows what could have been. So,
well, and speaking of the Seahawks, I mean, think about it. Cam Chancellor and Earl Thomas both signed the contracts, quote, too early.
Yeah.
And then the market for the safeties went up, and that caused a lot of the rift that ultimately kind of led to the doom of the dynasty,
Well, and that, going back to Sean Kemp, I think by the time he leaves, same kind of thing. He was feeling like he was undervalued and those kinds of things. So that was the other, I don't think they talk about that, but it's been some off script, is there was a serious talks about Kemp for Pippen in like 94 or something like that. And whether that would have been a good trade for Pippen or not, but if that would have kept Kemp, kind of more engaged in the game, and what his career could have been if he really stayed with it,
Well, and apparently in 97, they almost traded Scottie Pippen for Tracy McGrady.
Oh, geez.
Which, if you pair Scotty or T-Mac with Michael Jordan at the end of Michael Jordan's career, that might have.
Jeez. Yeah.
So who knows?
Yeah. Yeah. All those who.
It's fun. It's fun to look back and think about those what if scenarios.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, and then obviously the Sonics probably wouldn't have been in a position to get Peyton, but then Schrempf ended up being a key part of it. And, they took the Bulls in 96 to 6 games, so funny story. Gatorade used to have this deal where you pull on the cap for the finals, and so I pulled the cap, it was Bulls in 6, right? And being a Sonics fan, I was like, I don't care. I don't want this to happen. It happened. That's what happened. And so I got this water bottle, a bag, and like a towel or something like that.
Nice. Nice. There you go.
The end of the era, but at least I got the Gatorade swag. So, well, let's introduce a bit. They're like, everybody's used to me. I mean, I've got tens of people following me.
I know. Has TMZ caught you? I mean, I know it's been the shutdown. I mean, are you prepared for that the next time you go to the grocery store?
I'm just
not wearing your mask.
Guys, I'm here with my wife and my family, and they're like, oh, they don't do that for most celebrities, but for me, they're like, hey, let's give them his space. And introducing who you are. So our concept for this is pros versus Joes, right?
Right.
And not in any way diminishing your experience, but you've got a history in the construction and property management industry.
Right.
Your company is in the process of transitioning into property restoration insurance work, and specifically, messing around with Xactimate.
Yeah.
So
it's fun, man. It's fun.
Yeah. So maybe a brief, what's your background in construction? What was All American doing prior to this pivot? And then ready, 10 seconds, go.
All right. So like you said, I was a commercial property manager for almost 10 years. Met my business partner, Brandon, 7-8 years ago. He worked for one of the main GCs that worked at a lot of our sites that we took care of, and hit it off. Just kind of, we were on site a lot together and just had a lot of conversations, and he had aspirations to go off on his own and start his own thing. I mean, he's had training in almost any kind of construction there is since his
real technical guy.
Yeah, he knows a lot of stuff. And I have a business degree from UW. I've always kind of had that entrepreneurial, wanted to have kind of a side hustle type of thing. And so we just started talking, and, one thing led to another, and he decided to make the jump. And I was like, hey, I'll just kind of behind the scenes, run the business aspect of it, make you a logo and set you up a actual email address and business cards, that type of stuff, kind of just those things you need to make yourself, quote, legitimate in the marketplace. And slowly but surely just kind of faded out of one profession and made the jump a little over 2 years ago, full time at All American, which that is the name of my company, All American Real Estate Services. We are soon to be All American Construction Services. We have done anything and everything in construction so far that we've come across. I mean, we started off primarily as a maintenance company, obviously, servicing properties that I took care of and things like that. So that's kind of where our niche was at that point. We were, a service provider for a lot of 3 or 4 kind of big brand corporations that had a lot of sites that we took care of, after hours work, things like that.
All the fun stuff.
Yeah, all that stuff that, you can't do during the day, that we had to figure out how to have night crews, and, you had to have keys and access codes and all that kind of stuff, which is kind of fun. I mean, you learned a lot. And then slowly but surely, both Bryan and I have always kind of had that desire to own and manage our own real estate down the road. So we've dabbled in, residential remodels, single family homes. We've
tenant improvement.
Yeah, we've done commercial TIs like that. We've done a couple of build outs for some national brands as well. Commercial construction, full on remodels of like apartment complexes and stuff like that. And this kind of leads into where, we met you, and we were just kind of looking to find something that was economy proof, and maintenance is economy proof, but there's a lot of overhead that is required in maintenance, because you got to have a lot of guys, you got to have a lot of vehicles, you're carrying a lot of expenses that are, challenging at some, for a young company like we are. We've had to figure out and navigate, building our company credit, things like that is hard. I mean, when you start off as a new business, you pretty much have to have everything riding on your personal credit, which then takes a toll on any of the business owners' personal credit. So over the last couple of years, we've been trying to navigate, how do we get out of this and get more secure? And we've come to this, restoration side of things on the, insurance buildbacks, where we've started to partner with other mitigation firms that are always looking for contractors that can come in and partner with them and pretty much take the baton. If you think about it in a relay race, like you got the plumber, that's the first responder, and you got the MIT company. And then as soon as the MIT's done, you got the restoration. So that's what we're dabbling in now. And we're kind of jumping in full force. We're still going to do other components and things like that, but it is something that we're definitely going full bore towards right now.
Well, it's good to keep your portfolio diversified, right? Because it's funny,
right?
The restoration companies want to get into property management, property management companies. Everybody thinks everybody's, revenue stream is better.
Right. Oh, and it's funny how everything's connected.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Yep. Everything's connected.
Yep. So, so that's the pro, I've more experience than you specifically in insurance related work. And then the Joe being, it's been encouraging to me, you and Brandon both looking at the industry saying, hey, this is a really cool opportunity. And you guys have been blessed in the sense of, you've partnered with some good key allies that, see things similar to the way you see things, and have been feeding you good work. And, so far, a lot of the companies you've been working with have been reasonable. It's not a blank check, but it's reasonable back and forth. And so,
there's an expectation that we give back, but that's just how the market is. And we're very thankful for those opportunities, and we're rolling with it, man. It's great.
Well, and even with the carriers, as far as like the pushback, it's been, pretty it's been sound, you know. So, well, okay. So how we met, we were talking about this the other day.
And I didn't know this story until you told me a couple days ago.
There was a networking event. We'll keep that party unnamed, but so I'm wearing the Tacoma Rainiers as the minor league baseball team. They had an event at Cheney Stadium, and
That's not a Rainier shirt.
Yep,
it's a Rainiers or Rainier.
I got it at the Rainier store.
Okay.
Yeah, but it dual representation, right? So, but they we go to this event, and so I register. You know, I go in. You know, are you a vendor? I get my name tagged, yada yada yada, and we met. We hit it off. I think actually I talked to Brandon first. I think he might have been wearing a Mariners hat or something like that. So we were talking about the state of the Mariners and you know, those kinds of things, and and he's a a longtime Tacoma guy, and so some fun stories there, and I'm really excited. The Tacoma Defiance is now there at the stadium, and they've got the Storm playing there too, and so it's a cool spot in Tacoma.
Yeah, it is cool.
So anyways, we're so we hit it off. We talked for quite a bit, went around, and then it comes lunchtime. 3 hours later or whatever. And so I'm getting my burger, but mayonnaise on my bun, and the lady comes up. She's like, well, are you a vendor? And I was like, no. And she gets, you could tell she's like, this is awkward, but this is for vendors only. And I was like, I go, wow. I go, I don't remember what I said, but I said when I signed up, it said vendor, non-vendor price. I paid the non-vendor price as a non-vendor, and then I felt like when I checked in, I said the same thing. And,
they took your money though, right? They took your money.
Took the money.
They had no problem doing that.
Yeah. And so I felt like I wasn't trying to be nefarious. I wasn't like it said vendors only or members only or whatever. And, and I was like, I'm going to try to sneak in. And so, she was like, well, why don't you go ahead and finish up your hamburger, then you need to get out. And I was like, okay. So
we were wondering where you went.
Yeah. I think I said goodbye or whatever and took some pictures, grabbed an extra hot dog, and I got
peanuts.
I got a family of 4, I got 4 kids, so I took some hot dogs home but so you didn't know that part, but I remember I'm walking by your trucks because I parked fairly close to you, not knowing. And so you got these black trucks with this nice red eagle on it, and it says All American, and they both look, really similar, nice and clean. And I was like, man, that's a badass looking truck. It's the red pops, the nice eagle and everything. Well, come to find out, you were telling me the other day that eagle's gotten you guys into a little bit of trouble, eh?
Just a little bit. Unintentional trouble. I have to preface that with what. So we were playing. We finished up a round of golf at a country club in Tacoma, and we were sitting there eating lunch, and all of a sudden, I look over to my left, and there's this old dude. He's just scowling, just furious looking at me. And I'm just like, okay, whatever, man. Maybe he had a bad round or something. Yeah, exactly. And he goes, hey. I'm like, yeah, what's up? And he's like, what's with your shirt? And I'm like, oh, this is my company. See, this is my partner Brandon. He's got a shirt on too. No, like, what's with your shirt? Like, you look like a Gestapo.
Oh, jeez.
And so, sidebar, I'm wearing a kind of a light gray golf polo.
Yeah.
With our red eagle on it. Well, for those that don't know, our logo, it's kind of a Firebird, Thunderbird, whatever you want to call it, kind of that, just.
Well, think of the classic like Trans Am Firebird, right? But the wing, spread out. So I'll try to put a picture up. I'm not super tech savvy, but I'll try to put a picture.
Yeah, non-millennial will try to put our logo on there.
Yeah.
But he has a red eagle on the gray shirt, and he's like, no, you are you a Nazi? What's with your logo? I mean, like, and I'm like,
that had never come up before, right?
No, and he straight up told me that he used to kill MFers, like me.
now that you've said it, I can't unsee it, right? Because
Right.
it doesn't at all look like it, and yet
No.
it does look like it.
Not exactly.
At least you didn't put All American right under the feet, in like a circle or something.
Right. So I apologize. I'm like, no, I'm like, it's not what it seems. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I did not mean to offend you.
Yeah.
So fast forward a couple months, like you said, we have black trucks. Like that was kind of one of the brand things that we wanted to stand out. Most contractors have white trucks.
Yeah.
Or white vans. We wanted, we were able to find black ones, which, in Washington isn't really a good move. I mean, there's a reason people have white because it's a lot easier to keep clean. But, but we have a big, Sprinter with the tall roof and the long wheelbase and all that. And it has the big logo on the side. And one of our employees, his name is Mike, and he has a shaved head. And he pulls up to this site, and there's a bar there, and he's unloading. He's getting some ladders out. We're doing a TI, and all of a sudden, these two bald guys come out of the bar and just start yelling at him and giving him the Nazi salute.
Giving the salute. Oh,
yeah, it's just like, so he told us that, and Brandon and I were like,
"This is downtown Seattle."
Yeah,
pretty liberal area, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I was like, okay, we need to change our logo because we do not want to give off that impression. You know what I mean? Like that's not at all who we are. What we represent.
Twice, right? Twice in your several years of being in existence, but at the same time, twice.
Well, twice in 2 months, like that. That means it's a trend, right?
Yeah. So it kind of fits at the right time that you're wanting to rebrand. Well, that got me thinking, though. So like a branding faux pas. I put a question out on LinkedIn and Instagram trying to get some. And I actually did have one guy from property management. He sent me a list of like the what was it? The biggest brand fails of 2019.
Okay.
And I know we had talked about previously Peloton, right? So
that's my favorite one. Yeah.
Well, why don't you explain it? What's the problem with the Peloton?
Well, what's funny is I actually really like the branding of Peloton because
it's slick.
It's really clean. I like they have big black vans. It's really like it's clean and
you like them black vans, don't you?
Yeah, I do. It stands out, and because when you see it, when they're delivery vans, you see them driving down the road. You know who it is, and I think that's really
it's got the P, right?
Yeah, the P on the back. I think it has a white roof, and but you know who it is, and I think that's what a real good brand is like if you just quickly glance at it, you know what it is.
Yeah.
And they're all about everything's clean, everything's kind of high end, fancy. Like we sell a really, really expensive bike, and it's almost like a status symbol to have in your home, right?
Well, kind of the Apple, right?
Apple, Nordstrom, that top tier stuff, which is cool. But then it had that commercial that when it first came on, like Christmas I didn't think anything of it. Yeah, it was Christmas time, and husband was giving his wife a Peloton, and she loved it, and whatever. But then all of a sudden, because like going back to that guy that was in World War II, it's all about your kind of your frame of reference, right? And someone, I don't even know who started it or how it came out, but all of a sudden it got tagged as like misogynistic or something.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it just was like, Peloton's bad, Peloton's bad, Peloton's bad.
Well, basically people spun it rather than she wanted it. It's like this young, attractive, fairly fit gal, and the guy's like, here, get in the dungeon and go.
Yeah, wake up at 5 a.m. while I'm sleeping because you need to go ride your bike.
Get your 5% body fat down to 4. You heifer. Yeah. So
that's right.
Yeah, it's funny. I watched it, and maybe I'm just blind, and I watched it with my wife, and that's like saying, I have an ethnic friend or something like that, right? But it's like watching it. I was thinking, my mind was it was a gift she wanted. Her husband just bought her a $4,000 exercise bike, and then she, and then I thought even too, my perception, which was probably more what they were going for, like the daughter's like, yeah, my mom's getting after it, she's waking up, and so what I don't know, I watched their stock. It didn't affect, from what I could see, their stock. I don't know that it's affected their brand, because sometimes I think people's actual buying habits and reactions to something like that I could remember a while back what the Pepsi one. Pepsi had a really off brand where like one of the little Jenner sisters was like bridging the gap between,
Oh yeah.
racial conflict, and there everybody was just like, no.
Yeah, she's walking down the street or something, handing out Pepsis, right? Wasn't that at the
It's like
at some
things together, and that was just extremely like just tone deaf, right? And so the Peloton one, regardless, it brought a lot of attention to Peloton, and I'm sure people that had never heard of it. That's the other part of it, is like, if you really actually hate something, the more you talk about it, the more you kind of drive people to at least be aware of it. So it's kind of a good story.
right.
I don't think it's been, it's impacted their sales at all, and then you were bringing up.
I don't remember the last time I saw a Peloton commercial though.
Well, they came out with one shortly after.
Okay.
I think it was a dude.
But was it a completely different concept though, where it wasn't like a husband-wife dynamic? It's more. Yeah. It's probably more like based on like working out and.
Yeah,
kind of
I'm not sure. Yeah, but it's just crazy. But like you said, a top end, kind of more of a brand, and people that want to be fit. And that's like, I hear a lot of people loving them. So.
Yeah.
But you said you saw Ryan Reynolds. I heard about the ad. I never saw it, but he has a gin company, and he didn't he actually get the actress in the ad?
Yeah, so he got the wife that is in the Peloton commercial, and all of a sudden you just see these three women at a bar drinking his gin, and the two outs, the women on either side are like trying to cheer up the wife in the middle that clearly looks like she just got divorced. They show vividly that she doesn't have a wedding ring on, and it's the same wife.
Nice.
And she's just downing this gin, right? And the friends are like, "Oh, this is gonna be a fun night."
Yeah.
So that was funny how Ryan Reynolds was kind of really genius, like where he could take something that was causing like negative, opinions to go towards Peloton and use that for his own gain, to gain traction in the marketplace, right? Because I've never heard of, I'm not a gin guy, but I've never heard of his gin.
Well, it goes both ways, right? Because marketing and then a social media outcry against something doesn't necessarily mean there's an actual ripple in the marketplace or it's affecting habits. Mm-hmm. People can bitch about stuff and it may or may not have an impact. That's part of what makes America great, and part of, maybe what some people object, that, you can raise your thing. And then, but if you're a smaller company, you can be nimble, and depending on your product, I think too often people are scared to do something. And so they just end up doing what everybody else does. And it's, boring, it doesn't.
But I think it goes back to the original point that Peloton's a good brand because they were able to make it through a controversy like that. Right.
Yeah. So. And I would imagine it. And and two,
without even addressing it, like it was just like they stopped playing the commercial, and it was okay. Just let it go away.
You don't want to be tone deaf as a company, but two, I think to some degree, it wasn't ill intentioned, right? Or grossly. I wouldn't say it was in the category of grossly tone deaf. It's just like, well, shit, like we didn't think of it that way.
Right.
Folded and whatever. I guess one that impacts us here locally, the Boeing 737 MAX. Obviously not funny because two planes went down and
not good for business. No.
300 plus people died, and then it gets grounded, right? But I'm from Eastern Washington. I don't remember if I told you this. I went to visit my sister a while back, and they have the airport in Moses Lake. Mm-hmm. And it's for a long time been super long runway. They've had a contract with Japanese airlines for training and stuff like that. I remember early 2000s, it was one of the alternate landings for one of the shuttles because it's a military runway. It was the base out there. But anyways, that whole area is just full of 737 Maxes. That's one of the areas where they're storing.
Really? They're just hanging out.
Yeah, waiting for them to be repaired. But I don't know if that's as much as a brand as just, it sounds like rushing to get something out. And, missing a few key items, right?
Your plane should fly.
Yeah, or not like try to crash itself, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The stories you read. So,
Right.
them coming out of that, thankfully you can't even really give credit to Boeing because Trump grounded them, right? I mean, not the FDA, but the FTA or whatever it is. What do you think about the Tesla Cybertruck?
I was excited to see it, but man, when it came out, it looked. I don't know. I was disappointed. I was excited to.
What did it invoke anything, or is it just like meh?
Honestly, when I saw it, I was like, "This isn't real. That's not the truck that they are going to release. This is a hoax. This is. I mean, especially when they broke the bulletproof glass or whatever, and then they dented the non-dentable panels.
Somebody's fired or dead. Yeah.
Yeah, like I don't know. I mean,
well,
I didn't like it.
The one
I like the other Teslas though. The other Teslas are cool,
but on the one hand, though, I mean, almost all trucks are some variation of the same thing, right? It's like Kias look like Mercedes now, Hyundais look like, Lexuses. There's very little variation in body types, and so that's the one thing I hand to Elon Musk is, it's different. It is definitely different, and I think if you're a niche market, I don't think he's going after, although I think the price on it is like $60K or something like that.
Who's going to buy that though? I mean,
I got a buddy that has 2 of them on reserve, so people like the Peloton thing, people that are brand loyal, they're like, oh yeah, so.
I guess, if you live in an urban like environment where you're not using it like on a daily basis as a contractor, I could see.
Well, but even, I think the hard part of the contractor, obviously they got to put the bigger batteries in it or something to get the mileage because you typically drive longer distances or whatever. So
I would just think about, I mean, I don't know. I was not impressed.
Not a hit. It would be interesting to see up close though, to see, what,
well, what do you know? I mean, you said the Peloton stock wasn't affected. Was the Tesla stock affected after that?
Maybe slightly. Just pre-COVID, I remember Tesla's stock went under $500. I think it went under $400 for a minute, and it's back up to almost $800 now. So. And
they account that for the truck?
No, I think it was more because they were thinking their factories were going to get shut down because they were non-essential. So. Yeah. The stock market, people are talking about like, well, the stock market's not affected, that's more based on the solvency of the core businesses, as opposed to how it's impacting regular people. So,
well, and you also got to factor in the Elon Musk component, right?
Yeah. We know he's going to rebound. Well, and it's been a stock that's traditionally kind of done this.
Yeah.
Right. The other one, so we were talking a little bit, are you aware of WeWork? Or had you been aware of it prior to us talking about?
Not till you broached it, but
it's your space, the property management. So it's the shared working spaces. I don't remember the guy. I don't really care.
So is it kind of like that the office type setup that we had a couple years ago, where you can rent like a little office within a whole floor?
I think they were doing that like on massive scale, right? But it's another one of those companies where he's like, it's not even about the product. It's about the impact on the world. I recently listened to a podcast about it, and he got some big people like Ashton Kutcher. To me, the people that started looking at it, and Scott Galloway kind of he coined the phrase yoga babble, and it's like the degree of a company's just kind of BS that they throw out there in relationship to its actual metrics. And
got it.
People get he got in like people that were, I don't remember if it was Alibaba or something like that, some of those big investors. So he had big people driving him and telling him he's a genius and stuff like that. But it basically crumbled, and it turned out it was BS. One of the things that stands out, he was like, we're going so green that we're not even allowing our salespeople to buy steak dinners, no meat. You can't buy meat. So, sometimes in companies, it's like there's a cap on alcohol, or you can't buy
right.
You can't buy steak dinners. They're like, what are we going to do? And it turns out he's doing this like Uber lamb shake, type of things, on his vacations and stuff like that. So just a hypocrite, and whatever.
Yeah. He's like Leo.
Yeah. So, but the the Yoga Babble came out of that. I guess I was scrolling through. They talk about branding fails. They're talking about Baby Yoda. They aren't saying Baby Yoda was a fail, but they didn't get the product out soon enough. Like around Christmas time, you couldn't buy Baby Yoda, crap or whatever. So
brand oversight.
Yeah, or didn't expect it to be as popular as it was. So sometimes even companies like Disney don't know what the gem that they have, huh? So
Mandalorian was good though. After you got through the first couple episodes, the first 2 or 3 were slow.
Yeah, but that kind of evoked kind of the classic, yeah,
but there was that one episode where it was like 30-something minutes where there was no talking. That was
really?
a little, yeah.
Yeah, I
liked it though. I mean, I like Jon Favreau a lot, but
yeah,
I really
he's killer.
Good.
So as we kind of wrap things up, did you have any thoughts? You've been listening to the podcast, so the Pro versus Joe. So what episode 1 was David Princeton with claim advocacy. There we go.
Come on, Pro.
Advocacy service. Any thoughts on that episode? Do you recall that one?
Yeah. I think that's a really cool service that he offers that,
yeah.
We've been doing this for 7-8 months now. Had a lot of interactions with a lot of adjusters, and most of them have been good, but there are some, whether it's the company the insurance company they work for, or just the adjuster themselves, that they're clearly out to protect the insurance company rather than, the homeowner or business owner. I mean, it goes both ways, commercial and residential, but just to know that there's someone that can go to bat for our clients if we feel like, or they feel like they're kind of getting pushed around by their adjuster a little bit to get, their claim closed out on a lower level. It's cool. I really thought that's something that we could rely on, because then, we don't have to be the expert. We can just provide them, a place to go and talk to an expert that will have their back.
Well, we've talked about this a little bit, but there's a real fine line between saying I'm a contractor and I believe this is the estimate, this is the scope of work that I believe is appropriate to bring you to pre-loss conditions. Right. This is what I need as a contractor to be able to do that and make a profit, much like the insurance company is making a profit and it's more than 10 and 10. For
real.
But then when an adjuster or a claims professional wants to haggle on the details, it's like, at some point it can get, like we said, we've been talking about, there's been most of them have been pretty reasonable so far. And it's like, okay, adjust it this way or whatnot. But, when it gets into the contractor getting into the contract language and fighting ridiculous battles, then it's like, that's not what we're supposed to be doing. I'm not an adjuster. You're an adjuster. And, what you're doing is wrong. It's like, that's not restoring them to pre-loss conditions. So,
right. And truthfully, if we don't fight for our client, they're not going to get their home or their business back to pre-loss, right?
Well, we were talking about that one where the mitigation company was called out. They cut one side of the wall, but then didn't do anything on the sandwich wall. They didn't do, and it was near the source area, right, as it relates to the dining room. Where
they had opened up the wall on the opposite side of the room and not the wall directly adjacent to the hot water tank that blew up. And they only had a certain number of, I think it was $5,000 or whatever of mold coverage. And the adjuster was trying to say like, well, even if we open the wall up, they're not going to be covered. And I'm like, but you hired the mitigation company to go out and do this.
Right.
And they did not cut open that wall.
Right.
So if they didn't dry out that area and mold, right. Yeah, exactly. And that mold grew as a result of you, not doing your due diligence,
right?
Then shouldn't that be at the responsibility of the insurance company, not the homeowner?
Right.
Because the homeowner didn't say, don't open that wall. No, that was the mitigation vendor's choice.
Yeah.
And the mitigation vendor was a preferred vendor of that particular insurance company. So we had to advocate for our client. And, ultimately we did more due diligence and there wasn't mold there. But regardless, it ended up being a $400 or $500 fix where you had to open up the wall and patch a little drywall here and there. I mean, it is what it is. But
yeah,
ultimately they were trying to push through the claim. And as a result of us advocating for our client, they ended up with new flooring because the original
that was probably even more egregious, right? They were
right
laminate flooring affected by water
throughout the whole main floor of the home, whole floor.
It's fine.
Yeah, it's like, okay, but if you walk through there, it squeaks everywhere. There's cupping everywhere. It's just it was I don't know. It was crazy just to go through that. But that would have been a situation where if I knew that I could refer that client to someone like that, it would have been really cool for us to have them fight for our client.
And that's one thing that David brings up in, I kind of brought it up off the cuff, is like understanding, if there is a cap on mold, and we deal with that with asbestos too, there's typically caps for asbestos or it may not be covered. Well, so this wall and this floor would be pulled out with water damage and should have, so then
keep the M word out of it, right? Keep the M word out.
Well, or even if you did discover mold, then what is specific to mold? Maybe even the containment, you might have done that for a dust barrier anywhere. So then you're getting into your negative airs, your PPE and that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So that was one thing that David was talking about, is being aware of how the policies adjusted. And if there's a limit on something, making sure that you're classifying correctly. I think we were at your office, I was showing you, the dwelling coverage, contents coverage. And so there's ways you can manipulate that, if you know that there's a cap on something, so.
Right.
I feel like we're called to be doctors of disaster. And so, just like any doctor, you're continually learning and, and part of Xactimate's a big part of that tool, but it's more just making sure you're thinking through your processes and doing the right things every time. And
that you're really thorough when you go and you inspect someone's home that's been, especially because on our end, we come in after everything's primarily been demoed and dried out.
Well, one thing that you guys do that's great is video the loss, do the walkthrough and do the narrative. That's great for your own. You have a before and after, you've got notes. If you forgot to write something down, it's there, and then also having the pictures. So that's
I think that goes to the trying to utilize technology, quote, you've called me the millennial of mitigation or of restoration, right?
Yep.
But I think we can use the tools that we have, and if that helps us, provide a better service to our clients, then let's use it.
Well, I've always been, try to be practical, so I want to use as much technology as helps, but not use technology as just for the sake of using it. So,
and I think it's really interesting because, just from your perspective and mine, you've shown me how you do your drawings on your graph paper.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm geometrical. I really like spatially. I can see it that way. But for me, I like the Bosch, the app we use where we have the pictures and everything. It shows the measurements on it. For some reason, everybody kind of has their own flavor of doing it, right?
Well, and some guys like bringing their computers into a loss and writing right from the site. We had a guy that was using real effectively Surface Pro to do his sketching, and he had a rigid version of that tape measure that would import the sketch. And so, there's more than one way to skin a cat, right? But But that's I know I can. The one thing I like about the graph paper, and I've got a video about that I think you guys have seen, but, I like it because to me it's foolproof. And early technologies, some of that stuff would get erased and you lose all your stuff and you have to go back and do it, so.
Well, and what's funny about that is coming from the perspective being the contractor, especially as a GC, if everything's on that app that we use and it's all just laid out in an exportable PDF, which is great.
You can send it
to we can send that to everybody, and whether it's a flooring or a countertop or cabinets, it's all there, and we don't have to go back and try to draw it out or anything like that. It's just, if we make sure, maybe it takes us an extra 15, 20 minutes when we're in that home or that business, but ultimately that's going to save us time in the back end, not having to, repurpose things.
Well, and we've talked about that. The Bosch overall layout is a little bit, it's limited, as far as like trying to get the room dimensions and trying to figure out where things line up. But
it doesn't scale very well.
Where you can take pictures and put your measurements in the picture, that's super helpful.
And we're excited because we ordered the new iPad Pro that comes out or came out, and with the wide angle lens, because we have the iPhones with the wide angle lens, and that's been huge for us in our business. But I think our iPad's only maybe 2-3 years old, but it has a really narrow angled camera, and I mean you're leaning way back trying to take pictures, and it's hard, especially in these bigger homes we go to. You can't get everything on there.
Well, and that's, speaking of, let's see, I mentioned Andy McCabe there and Ben earlier. He was talking about Matterport with a 360 degree camera scan and being able to do a walkthrough, but there's some costs and some technology involved in that. So, well, good, man. Well, let's wrap up. Any other closing thoughts or anything for this segment? Pros versus Joes.
Jordan is better than LeBron.
Oh,
that's it.
You got to be definitive, right? That's
100%.
Take your stance, yeah.
And Kobe is better than LeBron, so it's Jordan, Kobe, LeBron.
Okay.
That's it.
All right. I definitely show my kids, when there's that dispute. Just I think the one thing that modern fans don't understand is just the way defense was played, back then. I think that's got to be a big account,
Well, and I know you said you hadn't watched episode 4. They go into detail on the Pistons and like what the Jordan rules and like,
I watched that 30 for 30 on the Pistons, the bad boys, right?
Yeah, that was good.
Watched the one on Rodman, that was really good too. So
yeah,
cool, man. Well, I appreciate you coming out for this, and hopefully people enjoy this and take something from it. And I like I said, I've been encouraged, you and Brandon's, coming to it and just saying, hey, this is cool. What do we do here? What do we do here? It's been exciting to me. So,
well, you've been a huge help to our company too, man. We're excited to kind of see how we both can grow.
Say that again.
John Isaacson has been played a crucial role in our company in the growth.
I just wanted to make sure.
He is an Xactimate pro.
Yeah, not a ninja.
No.
Well, cool, man. All right. Well, we'll talk to you again.
Sounds good, buddy. Talk to you soon. Please request record permission from the meeting host. Please, sir.
How would I do that? Allow record. Oh! I just pressed allow record over on manage participants. So.
Recording.
I'm recording and you're recording?
Let's see, I'm choosing a new location. Okay. Let's see. Record. Yep, it's working for me.
Sweet.